Welcome to Landscape Design. If you made it this far, you're going to be happy to know that we're actually going to start designing. You have your site survey, you have your wants and needs lists ready to go. It's time to put all that together. If we have a look at the design process, we're now ready to start step 3, the bubble plan. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to do a bubble plan. Let's get going. It's time to start laying this out and getting an idea what we might want to do with this garden. And when I do this, I always start with the most important things and work towards the less important ones. When I looked at this property, the one thing that stood out for me was the fact that you couldn't get out of the back door into the backyard without falling 3 feet. So the number one requirement for me is something back here to make that transition easier. And the most obvious answer is some sort of a deck. Now at this point, don't try to draw it in. We're just going to use what we call bubbles, basically circles and ovals. Try to get the size sort of correct, but don't put a lot of effort into doing that. There's no point putting a circle this big and saying, well, that's our deck. We're not going to make it 40 feet long, but it's going to be somewhere in this ballpark. We need a deck here. Or something similar so that I can walk out here and get to here. This might just be a set of steps going down to a patio, but I need something here. The other thing that's really important for this homeowner is to have a vegetable garden. Now, a vegetable garden needs lots of sun, and that's pretty easy in this property because it's all sun. Remember, north is up at this end, so this end is south. Anything along here is going to get lots of sun from the south and from the west. So we could put the vegetable garden anywhere we want. But you know what? Vegetable gardens aren't the neatest looking garden. If I put the vegetable garden out here, it's very functional. But every time I'm sitting at the breakfast nook, looking out, enjoying my garden, I'm going to see an ugly vegetable garden. And I don't want to see that. So this area is sort of prime real estate, and it's an area we don't really want to put our vegetable garden. A much better place is over here. It's kind of hidden from the main windows, so if this isn't quite as pretty as this, that's okay. It still gets lots of sun. And the other thing that's important is this water tap. It's really easy to get water from here into our vegetable bed. And vegetable beds need more watering than all of your other landscape. So being near water is a great idea. I think this is going to be for veg. Now you can see as we draw these circles, we're sort of defining what the areas will be used for, but we're not putting any kind of detail in there as to what they might look like. One of the problems people have with this kind of design is that they try to visualize the finished garden, and you shouldn't do that at this stage. We're just working with very vague concepts. So what else are we going to do with this garden? Well, I think the garden needs some sort of a destination. When I come out of the house and I'm sitting on my deck or patio, there should be something in the garden that draws me out into it. Otherwise, I'm just going to sit here and look at it. And maybe that's okay. But I think this garden is going to be much better if we have a destination somewhere in this area, farther away from the house. So I'm thinking something back here, some sort of a patio, or maybe an arbor. Don't know what's going there, but let's put something in this corner to draw the person out. The other thing to keep in mind is that this back fence is pretty ugly, and we want to hide that, so putting something in front of it is a good idea. Now, if we're going to get there, we have to have a pathway. I could put a direct pathway like this, but boy, that's kind of boring. So maybe something more like this. And while I'm thinking about pathways, how do I get from the front of the property to the backyard? Now I got my vegetable bed here. I'm going to have to do something over here. I'm going to have to allow people to come into my backyard from the front. I don't want them going through the house all the time. So there's got to be some sort of a path through here over to my deck. That's for my visitors. They'll come around the corner, come and see me on my deck and sit down and have a beer. So these pathways are practical things. but they allow us to join these other areas. It's really important to think about how people are going to move through the space, as well as what they're going to see when they're in the space. Now, you might remember that this property has no fence here. And if I'm standing here and looking this way, I just see one backyard after the other. And I don't want to do that. I want to have some separation, some privacy. So we've got to do something here to provide privacy. Now, what are we going to do about this side of the house? There's not much space over here. We've only got a few feet. But I'm thinking this might be a good place to hide some of our tools and so on. This is a pretty small space, and I don't think I want a big shed sticking out here. It's kind of ugly. But I could put maybe a smaller shed or something here. At least a place to put a few things. And if I do that, then I need pathways to get there. So this is a natural pathway here. As I'm doing this, I go back to my lists of needs and wants. And I try to pick the next most important thing off that list and figure out where I'm going to put it. I still have lots of space here. I could put perennial beds in here. I could put a rose garden if that's what I'm interested in. I also have space over here. So there's still lots of areas that I can do something with. But when I go back to my needs and wants list, this satisfies most of them. I have my vegetable bed, I can get out of the house, I have an interesting backyard because I have a destination, and I'm getting some privacy from my neighbors. So that's a pretty good start. What I want you to do is take out another blank site survey and go through the process again. Try to do something completely different, even if at first it just doesn't make any sense. And then a third one, and then a fourth one. The more of these that you do, the more likely it is that you will end up with a good design. So here's your homework assignment. I want you to create several different bubble plans. Now, I've only created one in the program to show you how it's done, but it's really important that you make several of these. Move things around in different parts of the garden. Once you've finished that process, pick the one that you like best. That's going to form the basis of the rest of the design process. So spend the time you need to get this step right. While you're doing this, watch the next video called Garden Style. I'm really looking forward to showing you what kind of designs I've come up with for my garden. See you in the next videos.